Well, howdy folks, welcome back to my channel and welcome to another list video today. Now, if you're a subscriber, you probably know I've got a playlist of these types of videos where I kind of list off things, and they range from my favorite scales to some of my favorite gadgets that I use in the studio and various other things in between. Now, the last one I posted in that playlist was a video that I called my 5 favorite instruments for beginners. And what I did in that video is I told 5 instruments that I thought that someone, as a beginner that didn't really have a lot of musical experience could get to the point of actually making music on pretty quickly. Well, today is kind of the antithesis of that video. Today I'm going to talk about 5 instruments that I've tried that I think are extremely difficult to get to the point of making music on. Now, that doesn't mean that they're extremely difficult to make a sound with, but to get to the point where you could play this in like a band situation or really compose with this instrument, I think that these 5 are some of the most difficult that I've tried. To be clear, I haven't tried every instrument on the planet. For instance, I've never tried an oboe, and I hear that's a tremendously difficult instrument to learn. So, it's not meant to be a comprehensive list, but it's my experience, it's my opinion. Let's get into it. So the first instrument that I'd like to talk about is the bones. And this is an extremely simple instrument. It's an ancient instrument, been around a very long time. And it's literally just 2 pieces of wood, as you can see, that you put between your fingers. And then you make like this kind of a motion with your wrist. And what happens is this bone stays anchored here against your palm. And this one sort of clacks against the other. And the idea of the bone, simple enough, is you kind of do this motion, and so you go 1, 2, 1, 2. But if you do it right, you should get kind of a double clack. So it kind of sounds like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. And what I have found about the bones is it takes a whole lot of practice. I've sat there, where I'm like, I'm just gonna do this for an hour or something and just sit there. And it's amazing how long it takes to start to get it. And eventually you start to get it, and then you set them down and you pick it up again like a couple days later and you're back to square one. This is an extremely difficult instrument to play. And the first time that I tried to play it, I sounded like a complete buffoon. And so any percussion instrument can have a stout learning curve, to go from, hey, I made a clack sound to I'm actually making something that sounds like music. But I feel like this one is particularly hard. So this is the first one on my list, the bones. And the next instrument I'd like to talk about is the Otamatone. Now, I've repeatedly said this is probably the weirdest instrument I've ever tried to play, but it's also one of the most difficult. And the reason this is so difficult is you have this ribbon here that controls the pitch. And anywhere you touch on that ribbon gives you a pitch. I'll show you what I'm talking about here. Let's turn it on. There is no markings for where your notes are. So, is that a note? Is that a note? So you really have to kind of figure it out. And when you try to play a melody on it, it's very, very difficult. And the first time I tried to play this, I was mortified. However, if you mess with it for a while, you start to figure out kind of where the recognizable pitches are. And it definitely takes a while. And if you're gonna master this, you're talking about hours and hours of work. Okay, and the next instrument that I think is extremely difficult to get some good sounds out of is right here, the Didgeridoo. Now, this one you might recognize. I did a video where I made this one from scratch, and this was my first Didgeridoo. There certainly are a lot of pre-made ones out there. But when I first tried to play this, never playing a didgeridoo before, when I sat down to play this, it sounded like fart noises. It really takes a long time to get that drone sound out of the didgeridoo. Like, you're gonna need some practice. And the technique, you'll understand the technique pretty quickly, but to actually get to the point where you're playing like a good drone, it takes a very long time. And then, once you try to figure out that circular breathing, which, let's be honest, I haven't even figured it out yet, it's really, really difficult. And then once you get that, then you start figuring out how to do didgeridoo rhythms, and then it's like a percussion instrument. It's all over, you gotta learn that whole rhythm technique. So this is a very, very difficult instrument to learn, in my opinion, but it is a really cool instrument. And the next instrument on my list is the Washtub Bass. And the Washtub Bass is rather big and unruly, so I'm not gonna try to squeeze it into this little space. I'll just put in a picture of it right over there. But the Washtub Bass is difficult because it really doesn't have a reference pitch. And what I mean by that, if you take any string instrument, the banjo, the guitar, the standard bass guitar, a ukulele, when you pluck that string, the string vibrates at a frequency. You obviously need to tune it, but if that string is tuned to an E, every time you pluck it, that's an E. What's so weird about the Washtub Bass is it doesn't have any frets or any reference pitch. I mean, if you don't have any pressure on the string, it doesn't even make a noise. You have to put pressure on the string just to get your first note. And so trying to figure out where a G or an A or a D is or anything like that without playing with another musician, if somebody's playing guitar along with you or something, you might have more of a reference that you can kind of match. But to just play that thing, it's very, very difficult. And the first time that I played Washtub Bass, I was amazed at how bad I was. Okay, and that's gonna bring me to my 5th instrument on the list, and I have it right here, the Modular Synthesizer. Now, I kind of waffled about putting this one on the list because if what you want to do is create experimental sounds, I think this is one of the best tools that there is, and it's very intuitive because you can just start plugging in cables and you just start getting weird noises. And so for that, yeah, it's extremely immediate. But remember, my qualifications from the beginning were more like to compose and to make recognizable music with. And I think that is pretty difficult on this instrument. And let me show you what I'm talking about. I've patched up something very simple here, just a simple little synth patch. And if I hit this play button, we hear a melody. And this took almost no effort. So I know somebody's saying, well, then that's an easy instrument. That took almost no effort and you've already made a melody. And that's true. But are you annoyed yet? I mean, this is robotic. It's not lively. It's not musical yet. And that's where I think why this instrument is on the list, is to get to the point of making something like this into something that you want to listen to. I feel like there's a lot of time and understanding involved in that. And so, for instance, you can take this, add a little bit of effects, and it starts to become more interesting already, right? But then what you really have to figure out is the dynamics. So if I go in there and kind of take away, create kind of a timbral shift, and then add it back, I start to get something that breathes a little more. And then in the same way that I'm sort of taking away character from the sound here, I also want to figure out a way to add character to the sound like this. And then use them together, along with those effects. And that's where this starts to become more of an instrument, is when you really start to figure all that out. So I feel like that takes a lot of time and a lot of practice to get to that point. So that one makes the list. So there you go, folks. There were 5 instruments that I think are some of the most difficult to get proficient with. Again, not a comprehensive list. I haven't played every instrument, but from my own experiences, there you go. Really hope you guys liked this video. And of course, if you do like my channel, please hit that subscribe button below. And if you like this video, thumbs up would be great. See you guys soon.